I mean, I couldn't push at all. The car was all over the place, sliding around a lot. So yeah, I had to underdrive it a lot, you know, just to not have a moment. That of course doesn't work in qualifying.
Listen, you won.
For the first time in his F1 career, Verstappen failed to make it past Q1 due to pure lack of pace, not engine penalties or gearbox failures. No excuses. No rain. Just raw data, and it is terrifying for Red Bull. In a desperate move after a terrible sprint race, Red Bull gambled with a radically softer setup and aerodynamic tweaks. What followed wasn't a breakthrough, it was a total collapse. Max was fighting the car through every turn. Sector times showed instability in low-speed corners and a complete lack of mechanical grip. It was like watching a four-time world champion wrestling a midfield car. Down 39 points. Starting 16th. The dream of a fifth title has turned into a nightmare, confirmed by Verstappen's own heartbreaking admission in Brazil. The Brazilian Grand Prix qualifying session sent shockwaves through the paddock, and not for the usual reasons. For the first time this season, and only the second time in his recent F1 career, Max Verstappen was eliminated in Q1. No engine penalty. No wet weather chaos. Just raw pace or the sudden, unexplainable lack of it. It was a moment that defied logic. The three-time reigning world champion, fighting his car through every corner, watching his name plummet on the timing screens. The numbers were brutal. Verstappen was almost 7/10 off the Q1 cutoff. His car looked unrecognizable on track, unstable under braking, sluggish on throttle application, and visibly unpredictable through Interlagos' slower sections. It wasn't just a lack of top speed. This was deeper. Verstappen himself said over radio, "I have no idea what's going on." In the garage, Red Bull's senior engineers stood motionless. Something had gone horribly wrong. Sources inside the Red Bull camp revealed that the team had implemented a last-minute setup adjustment, a reaction to Friday's sprint performance, where Max had also struggled to find rhythm. Mekies and the trackside engineering group had opted to go aggressive on right height and front-end camber to unlock rotation in Sector 2. But the gamble failed catastrophically. Not only did they lose rear grip, but they also destabilized the car's ability to recover over curbs. Verstappen wasn't driving a title-contending machine, he was fighting just to keep it on track. That's what made the data leaks so damning. Initial telemetry showed wildly inconsistent load values on the rear left. Some insiders hinted at a potential suspension issue, while others believed the aerodynamic balance was skewed by a diffuser stall, possibly triggered by a non-ideal rake adjustment. Either way, Verstappen was being asked to drive a knife-edge car in one of the tightest qualifying battles of the year. In modern Formula 1, a 2/10 deficit can mean elimination. Max was nearly 7. Verstappen's reaction was subdued, but cutting. After exiting the car, he gave no excuses. No finger pointing. Just a simple, "We were nowhere." That is perhaps the most shocking thing of all. Not just the performance, but the acceptance. Verstappen knew the title fight had already become a steep climb. After Brazil, it now borders on impossible. His rivals Leclerc and Norris are poised to maximize. Red Bull, for once, looks vulnerable. This wasn't just a bad lap. Max Verstappen's elimination in Q1 was the result of a systemic breakdown between driver feel, car response, and engineering direction. Red Bull didn't bring a fundamentally slow car to Interlagos. But the decisions made heading into Saturday's qualifying session pushed the RB20 out of its performance window, and Verstappen was the first to suffer the consequences. It began on Friday during the sprint. Verstappen had already complained of instability, particularly through low-speed corners and in traction zones. The rear of the car felt loose, and he couldn't commit on corner entry. Red Bull responded by tweaking right height, diff settings, and aerodynamic balance, all in the hopes of getting cleaner rotation and a sharper front end. But what they gained in turn-in, they lost completely in mechanical stability. The Q1 session revealed it instantly. Verstappen's car looked visibly unstable through turns 1 and 4, key overtaking points that also demand supreme balance. Every exit showed oversteer corrections. Telemetry confirmed the instability. Throttle application was being delayed nearly half a second longer than usual in Sector 1. Max was trying to drive around the problem, But even he couldn't overcome basic mechanical limitations when the track was rubbering in and everyone else was gaining time. To make matters worse, the track evolution curve in Brazil is notoriously steep. Every minute counts. And Verstappen's first run already compromised didn't give him a clean baseline. By the time he exited the pits for his second attempt, traffic, tire temperature delta, and remaining track evolution had shifted. He was chasing ghosts. He pushed hard into turn 8, the car snapped mid-corner, and the lap was lost. But the true cost wasn't just qualifying P16. It was the shift in championship math. Leclerc starts from the front row. Norris is fourth. Both have clean air and a free shot at big points. Verstappen? He'll be lucky to scrape into the top 10, and even that assumes zero safety cars, no tire issues, and a clean getaway. The margin in the standings, just under 40 points, is now critical. It is no longer a title defense. It's survival. Red Bull knows it. The team radio was calm, but behind closed doors, it's been described as urgent. Mekies and his technical staff have already initiated an internal review. One insider described the car's balance as undrivable for a front runner, a phrase not heard at Red Bull since the hybrid era began. When Verstappen says, "We were nowhere," it's not frustration. It's the most accurate description of the problem. Max Verstappen's shock Q1 exit in Brazil wasn't just about a bad setup, it was about the consequences of engineering desperation. Red Bull, under pressure after an unconvincing sprint session, opted to gamble with aggressive car changes. And in that gamble, they crossed a line that left Verstappen driving a machine that no longer behaved like a championship contender. One of the most telling indicators came from the rear suspension telemetry. Engineers discovered that the ride height adjustments implemented after the sprint destabilized the underfloor airflow at high yaw angles. In simple terms, the car lost aerodynamic consistency the moment Max turned in aggressively. Add to that a softened front anti-roll bar to gain mid-corner rotation, and Verstappen was left with a car that pitched unpredictably under combined braking and steering input. Verstappen's talent was never in doubt. He adapted corner after corner. He modified his brake shapes, delayed throttle pickups, even shifted up earlier in turns 3 and 5 to control the rear. But in modern Formula 1, even elite skill can't overcome a car that's fundamentally out of phase with the track. The RB20 was running narrower than ideal in its front toe setup, a decision made to reduce tire deg for the race, and the result was a sluggish turn-in that left Max compromising every apex. The car also struggled on bumps. Interlagos is a famously uneven circuit, and with the modified rake, Verstappen's floor was bottoming out more than expected. That meant oscillations in downforce delivery, especially into turns 4 and 8. Verstappen radioed in, "The rear's just not there." That's as close as he comes to panic. Behind that sentence was a car that was fighting itself aerodynamically, mechanically, and thermally. And yet, even in this compromised state, Verstappen's lap times weren't miles off. He finished just 2/10 away from the Q2 cutoff. That's what makes this performance so frustrating for Red Bull and so impressive for Max. He nearly dragged a car with no rear support, unbalanced aero, and limited grip into the next round of qualifying on a circuit where others were gaining 3/10 per lap just from track evolution. This is what separates Verstappen. Most drivers would have overdriven. Many would have lost the car. Max kept it together, clean, composed, pushing to the edge of physics. He didn't make excuses. He made the most of a package that failed him. And in doing so, he reminded the F1 world that even when Red Bull stumbles, Verstappen remains a level above the car. Max Verstappen's early exit in Brazil qualifying didn't just cost him grid position, it may have shattered the momentum he spent an entire season building. With only 3 race weekends left in 2025, the championship fight is no longer under his control. The rivals he once held back, Leclerc, Norris, even Hamilton, are now the ones in clean air, racing forward while Max is left playing catch-up in traffic. Leclerc starts second. Norris sits on the second row. Both have cars that came alive in Sao Paulo. And both have narrowed the points gap with terrifying speed. Verstappen, once with a near 60-point cushion, now faces a realistic possibility of being overtaken if Brazil and Qatar go wrong. 1 poor race can be absorbed. 2. That's when titles start slipping. That's why this qualifying session could go down as the pivot point of the 2025 season. Red Bull is now in damage control mode. After dominating large parts of the early calendar, their margin has evaporated. Mekies knows it. The engineering team is already revisiting baseline settings for the next weekend. But changes made under pressure tend to create more pressure. Red Bull has spent years building a car around Verstappen's unique driving style: late rotation, stable exits, aggressive entry phases. When that balance breaks, so does the dominance. And yet, there's something that still gives Red Bull hope. Verstappen's mental strength. His ability to reboot. Remember 2022? A DNF in Australia, then 9 wins in 11 races. Or 2023's fight back after Baku. This isn't new territory for Max, it's just unfamiliar to see him here this late in the year. That's why Brazil isn't the end of his campaign. But it is a warning shot. A championship isn't won by speed alone. It's won by adapting when the car isn't working. And now, Verstappen has no other choice. Expect Sunday to be a full assault. Alternate tire strategy. Maximum risk. Overtakes into turn 1 that no one else would even consider. Verstappen knows the math. He knows what's required. And most of all, he knows what losing feels like. That alone will light a fire in the cockpit that data can't measure. And if anyone can turn a Q1 disaster into a Grand Prix miracle, it's the man behind the number 1.